Hello, this is Silvia Pavoni, investment editor of The Banker, and I'm at the first day of the Inter-American Development Bank meeting in Calgary, Canada, talking to Benoit, Daignault, Senior Vice President of the Export Development Canada Agency, and Jean Cardyn, the Regional Vice President for South America of the EDC. When we were just talking about the changes that the Canadian economy is witnessing, so things are definitely improving, although of course the Canadian economy never suffered as much as many other parts of the world. And with that also comes perhaps a little more appetite for risk, and the companies that you are supporting are certainly continuing to be very interested in looking at Latin America. So could you just give us a little bit of an overview on the latest developments and your thoughts for the future?
Sure. Well, actually, Canadian companies are increasingly looking abroad, more appetite to go beyond the U.S., and it shows in our results. We supported $10 billion worth of trade and investments between Canada and the Americas, Latin America, and Central America last year, record levels, and that's supporting Canadian companies, but it's also supporting their partners. So we're talking about Brazilian companies here, like Vale, who do have a substantial footprint in Canada. And so what we're seeing is more and more trade happening, but more importantly, I would say more investment happening, whether or not it's engineering firms in Canada establishing presence in Brazil, or Brazilian companies buying some assets and establishing presence in Canada.
And Jean, we of course we're talking also, and particularly about Brazil. Now is one of the markets that keeps on going strong on the international level and keeps on attracting a lot of investment interest. With that also come a few challenges because the competition is tough for Canadian companies, but also for the other companies, as Chinese firms are also very serious about investing in that country. You're based in Sao Paulo. What are your views on what's going to happen next, and in terms of investments, and well, what are the main opportunities for Canadian firms to invest into?
Well, yeah, my pleasure. The future, you know, I can only speak from my experience so far, what I have seen happening in the past. And I think we've got Canadian companies increasingly now starting to focus on Brazil and looking at the opportunities that exist there and discovering those. And discovering that it's a friendly environment. It's a country that welcomes investment. It's a country where there is huge opportunities in all sectors of the economy. We hear a lot about, you know, infrastructure, but you know, there is huge sectors. Brazil is a very developed country. It has, you know, world-class industries, world-class players, whether it's in infrastructure, engineering companies, construction companies, all the major car manufacturers are established there. They've got a space industry. Their agricultural sector is significant. Not to talk about mining, where Canadians are very active. You know, there's a lot of Canadian companies investing and who have invested in Brazil, and there's still a lot more to develop on that front. Brazil has now the fortune of having discovered some significant reserves of oil offshore, and that's going to help fuel the economy. It's got ambitious plans. It's got a very stable government. Politically, you know, we don't talk about political risk anymore in Brazil. Really, that's history. We've seen through successive governments that, you know, we've reached a level of stability there that are making people, investors, financiers, very comfortable about the risk. And Brazil is really, in Portuguese you would say, Brazil has got tem o vento em popa. They've got the wind blowing in their sails, and I don't think there's anything that's going to stop that. They've got significant resources, and they've got the will and the capacity to move ahead. And so, you know, there's a huge market there in terms of population and consumption. It's a country that is getting richer. The middle class is growing. So there is an increasing purchasing power, and they've got the resources, not only on the mining side, but on the oil side. And it's a unique country. You know, they've developed industries. They're leaders in many areas. One of them is, for example, ethanol. Produced from sugar cane. They're a leader in that field. And you've got world-class companies into Brazil that are now not just focusing on to Brazil. They could, focus just on their own market. There is a potential there to keep growing, but they're expanding their footprint. They're expanding into Canada. They're expanding into Africa. You've seen them into North and West Africa. Lots of Brazilians left North and West Africa, and that gave you an idea. So the magnitude of the economy and their interest. They're investing. They're pursuing contracts. They're competing with Canada. But there are also a lot of affinities that Canadians can invest in and find opportunities, develop these opportunities with Brazil. And that means partnering, investing into Brazil. And it's only, I think it's only going to grow. In the 9 months that I've been there, you see increasing number of companies coming into the market, very interested and doing their due diligence, taking their time to understand what they're getting into before they make a decision, and identifying the right partners, because that's critical, and taking a very rational approach to it. So I think, the future just bodes well, I think, for good Canadian companies.
What is your view on on how Brazilians are welcoming all this wave of interest and investments and money and firms coming to their country? Because of course the whole of the world, as we said, is looking at Brazil very seriously. How is that interest being received right now, where perhaps we're reaching a level where there might be even too much, maybe, that crosses the borders?
Brazil, we are always here, and it is true. It favors, local development of industries locally, local production, and there's strong encouragements to that. But Brazil, at the same time, realizes that their growth potential and their investment requirements are so big. There's a lot of gaps on the infrastructure side, just to mention an example. And Brazil realizes that they need to fill that gap, and they need to fill it fast. There's a lot of catching up that they have to do. They want to be ready for the Olympics and the World Cup. That's just two examples. But there's a growing population there that has needs, and there's an industry that is growing and that has the potential. And there's going to be significant investments that they have to make in the area of education. Just to give an example, I think in 2008 there were 17,000 Brazilians that went to study to Canada. That's, to me, 17,000 ambassadors, 17,000 people who have developed links with Canada that will last in many cases. And Canadians have made links with Brazilians, and they will visit Brazil increasingly. There's going to be growing tourism coming both ways. And you hear a lot of, Brazilians going to Canada to ski, to visit. They love Canada. The interest there was, for example, for the Olympics in Vancouver. Brazilians were watching the Olympics. They loved it. There was, great publicity for Canada, and they watch it perhaps even more than a lot of people in Canada, And so there's a very, I think, strong interest, and Brazil welcomes investment. They know that they cannot just do it themselves. There is a significant shortage in some areas of qualified manpower. They need to bring people in with qualification that can, contribute to development of their space industry, for example, and all the sectors. It's the oil and gas offshore. So there's a lot of needs there, and Brazil can only, welcome those investments, because they all need it to sustain their growth and improve the prosperity of the population. So.
Great. Thank you very much, Benoit and Jean, for your comments.